this is your typical ASP.NET grid. But we expand these now and drill down into the child elements. Yeah, we still have sorting capabilities on these.
Do you know if every time you expand a new row, do you know if it's at that time it's going to the database to get more data?
So it depends on how you wire it up. Yeah.
Okay.
If you bind it kind of like I did with the you bind straight to a SQL table, it's going to go back and pull that out every time. But if you're doing it either through an object or you can tell it to do paging, it'll do that just like a ASP.NET grid will do. So, another thing that was really popular on our last project was this group by. So right up there, this is just expressions, but you can see how you could make that into check boxes or something like that. So you can check customer or whatever. But when you group it, and that groups all that data for them. So I'm grouping by country here. So Argentina has 3 items, and these all collapse and expand.
And I actually use the Silverlight controls, and they keep the same control names. I mean, they've got a RadDoc and Silverlight, things like that. So I mean, they try to keep it very consistent between all the different tool sets.
Yeah, and slider, little rotator stuff, handlebars. Let's show the scheduler, and then we'll move on. This was unusual because this is like the biggest control I think they've done, because it combines a lot of things together. But so this looks like your typical Outlook. But again, you kind of get that out of the box. And like I said, all this stuff, all these examples, even on their website, comes with the markup and the source of the documentation they use is really good. As well as you can download the whole thing and run it locally if you want to.
I think as well, after you install the suite, there's some training videos that you can download. Is that right?
Yeah, they have videos on their site. Their forums are actually pretty active by employees and just develop non-employees as well. So they've always been pretty good about being able to find what you're looking for. So, all right. So the next product is the open access, and I haven't used this directly. I've just been doing some research on it, and it provides a pretty good solution compared to what's already out there, and they hold their own pretty well. So it gives you forward and backward mapping. So what that means is, if you're the I want to write my database first kind of guy, they support that. If you're the in Hibernate, I do the model first and then create the tables. It supports that as well. And it does generation either way, which is really cool. They have Visual Studio integration. I'll show you that in a second. Link support, persistence ignorance. So you don't have to directly save it. You just update it. You don't have to tell it to go to the database. It just does that on the update. You don't have to really keep track of that state and when it's saving that back to the database. And then the other cool thing was they saw a disconnected API. So you can have a grid and the user edits it, makes their updates, and then you can have a sync button that says sync changes. So they could actually, you could actually incorporate an application where they can work offline, make their changes, and then sync that back up. And then it supports the caching as you'd find in any ORM tool. So let's take a look at so this is what I was talking about. So we just have a typical grid here. So we've updated. Now we could keep making changes, or we could just hit the synchronize button. And now it's going to send that back to the database via the ORM. So, and then you get all the code that was required to do that example.
Do you have some sort of status on the synchronization? Maybe you're in a rough environment and the network connections
So,
iffy?
like if you were, it was iffy and you click synchronize. Yeah, I'm not sure how they're going to handle that. I mean, you could, if you don't, you can go away and without network connection, but I don't know how it's going to handle if it drops in the middle of it. If it's how, you know, because obviously if you queued up 20 changes, it's going to take it a while to write that. But I don't know enough to know how they're handling that, and I also don't know how they handle conflicts. So two users make the same change, how they're doing that. So they may rely on you to handle that.
Something similar to that, does, I mean, when you do the binding, does it recognize any constraints? Like if you bind down to a table, would it validate your input right here before you did the sync, maybe, or something like that?
I mean, if you're talking about, like, if you did validation on this, you would do it on the front end and not let them do the update. So
Exactly, yeah.
right. So if you clicked edit here,
You would have to write separate code to validate, or would it recognize the constraints in the table?
yeah, see, they don't have that. No, you would have to write the validation on the front end for that.
Well, haven't put that in there.
Yeah.
I'm with him.
So I couldn't get this to work. This is their UI tool to do all the generation. Think of like LLVGen, how that lets you pick tables or whatever and generate classes based on that. And it's and actually here's the Telerik tab or menu item in Visual Studio, and then underneath that is where you click. But I don't know if it was because of Windows 7 or if I had Visual Studio. I had Visual Studio 2010 installed, but it didn't like that. So.
But we know it exists because there's a screenshot.
We've actually used it internally at Atlas for a couple of projects, and I mean, it seemed to, it performed pretty well. So.
So how many people have used Water or any of those web testing tools? Okay. So Telerik actually offers two different types of web testing tools, and what we're talking about is you have a website that you built, you write the script that goes out, basically JavaScript that will click all the buttons for you, what you need, enter in data, submit the forms. There's your open source one called Watton that's, I think it's very hard to use. And then there's one built into Visual Studio as well. But you have to have team, the test edition to get that. So Telerik offers two. They offer a free one, and they offer one for a price I couldn't find out on their site. But the free one comes really without the recorder, without the, you kind of have to write the test scripts by hand. The one that's not free allows you, kind of comes with sample tests, comes with tests, and allows you to record your own test and edit that data. So let me run this, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So it's actually going to pull up their site, and it's actually testing, I think, the ASP.NET AJAX examples.